Thanks for listening to the Nice Podcast. I am available to deliver keynote presentations and workshops for your company or for your conference. Reach out to me, davedelaney.speaks.com, or email me and we can talk. Now on with the show.
Hey, it's Jason with the Marketing Podcast Network. You have less than 1 month left to get special early bird pricing for the Creator Economy Expo 2023. This event, folks, is for content creators and entrepreneurs interested in building and growing their content-first businesses. Do not miss this show. Join over 500 bloggers, podcasters, authors, newsletter writers, speakers, consultants, and freelancers at the learning and networking event for content creators. Plan to attend May 1st through the 3rd in Cleveland, Ohio. Register now to secure early bird pricing before it disappears March 31st. Early bird pricing ends March 31st. As a special offer, you can get $100 off just for listening to MPN shows like this one. Go to cex.events to register. Use the coupon code MPN100. The address, the URL, cex.events. That's the whole thing. Type that into your browser. cex.events. The code you use, MPN100. The Creator Economy Expo, Cleveland, May 1st through the 3rd. See you there.
Things go wrong. Even the best laid plans, right? It's how you respond to those that, in my book, really the what make or break a team and what make or break a product or a company as well.
Nice.
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 Nice. Nice.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice with Dave Delaney.
Welcome to the Nice Podcast, all about communication, collaboration, and becoming better leaders. I'm your host, Dave Delaney from Futureforth.com, where we help fast-growing technology companies retain talent and improve culture so you have happier, more connected teams. And today I'm speaking with Scott Lockhart. Scott is an Australian-American entrepreneur and real estate technology expert known for his innovative work in the real estate tech and leadership roles with Showcase IDX and EXP World Holdings. Scott, welcome to Nice.
G'day, Dave. How's it going?
I am grand. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. This is good.
Good. I've been looking forward to catching up. I know it's been, I guess, a couple of months since we last corresponded. And
yes, mate.
Yeah. So I always like to begin these things with one question, which is, what is the nicest thing someone has done for you recently?
The nicest thing that someone's done for me recently.
Yeah.
It's the small things. For me, it's when someone says they're going to do something and they actually do it. I keep the bar low for that kind of thing because I like dopamine hits. So I work with a bunch of folks. I've been kind of out for the past few weeks with the lingering effects of COVID and the lingering effects, and seeing kind of the team come together and kind of support me when I wasn't either in the online and actually working, and also with some of that brain fog. It feels really good to have people's support and not having to worry about what's going on and things like that. So I mean that is honestly the nicest thing, and to have 40 people there behind me feels really, really good.
And I'm glad you're feeling better now. And that's
thanks, mate.
Always a scary thing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your team and how, did you have a plan in place should you get ill from COVID or something like that? Do you have like a contingency plan like that? Or tell me a little bit about how they picked up the pieces, while you were sort of out of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a relatively small team in our company. About 40 people right now, and I have 3 VP level folks who support me, who I work with probably the most, one-on-one and together as a small team. And essentially setting it up ahead of time to make sure that everyone kind of knows what they're doing, that we have OKRs and we have a plan, and that if I'm out unexpectedly, or especially expectedly if I'm on vacation or something, like, it's not the end of the world if I'm not around. And I see that as a strength, not a weakness. It took me many, many years to get to the point where I didn't feel like I had to be online and plugged in every moment of the day just in case someone needed the CEO. It's important to be able to step away, and it's also important to be able to create an atmosphere where you're not necessary for everything. People can make decisions on their own and make good decisions on their own. It is even better while you're out, whether it's an expected outage or an unexpected one.
How did you learn? So you started Showcase IDX in 2003, right?
So it was actually started by someone else.
Oh, okay.
They started it as kind of a website, kind of a turnkey website company for real estate, and kind of grew that to a certain point. It was really only in Florida and Georgia, and then brought me in about 10 years ago, in July actually, to really take that and kind of pivot it into a WordPress plugin, which at the time was where the market was going. So we kind of took the concept and really built a business, a multi-million-dollar business around creating agent search. Property search, like you'd see on Zillow or Redfin, something like that, for real estate agent websites, for real estate agents who are using WordPress.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting nowadays. Yeah, I was just having a conversation with somebody this morning about technology and terminology in technology. So because that can get confusing when you're communicating with colleagues and prospects and clients and so forth. And we were talking. I brought up CMSs, which are content management systems, which are really WordPress. They're like
it is, yeah.
Which is ultimately a blog. So it's amazing now that all of our websites are, CMSs, content management systems, but they're actually really just powered by RSS still,
Yeah, I mean, so WordPress has really become the dominant platform for that across the web, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just real estate, but across the web. But some incredible amount of websites, some incredible percentage are powered by WordPress, which was originally a blog, but Automatic and Matt Mullenweg really created it, was smart enough at the beginning to kind of make it much more flexible. And folks have taken advantage of that with a really big plugin community and a lot of businesses built on top of the WordPress platform.
That's true. Yeah. I do love WordPress. My site's actually on Squarespace nowadays, but I'm a fan of WordPress and how far it's come. It's pretty astounding when you think about it. I mean, I think I might have had my first WordPress blog in 2004, maybe, I would say. And it's come a long way, baby.
It certainly has. It certainly has.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about an early lesson of leadership that you learned. It could be from Showcase IDX or previously even.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the earliest things I learned is that I can't do everything myself. As much as I want to, as much as I am pretty capable of doing a lot of different things. I'm kind of one of those entrepreneurs and founders who has pretty much done every job at the company at one point or other. My current title in Slack is janitor because that's how I feel. But really it was learning that you have to let other people do their jobs, and just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And also the tougher lesson there for people who are leading teams is letting your team make mistakes, and learning that there's such thing as a good mistake and there's such thing as a bad mistake, and being able to identify both fairly was something that it took me a long time to learn, quite frankly. It wasn't something that I was born with at all. Whether the tolerance of making mistakes, or even just really kind of looking at them and saying, okay, well, was this a good mistake or a bad mistake, and how can we learn from it? And the bad mistakes typically, in my book, are mistakes that are repeated.
Oh, that's a great point. So how did you empower your team members to make those mistakes?
Well, part of it's psychological safety, and making sure that you have a culture where folks can be honest about whether something's gone wrong or they've made a mistake. It's something or it can be as simple as I made a decision. I thought it was a good decision. It turned out not to be. We all do that. I mean, I do that all the time. And understanding that and kind of giving kind of psychological safety around that part of work, which is so crucial, allows us to tackle mistakes faster, be more honest about, and what has happened. And, in that response is really where the value is, really where a team can shine. It's not if something's going to go wrong, because it's gonna. Things go wrong. Even the best laid plans, right? It's how you respond to those that, in my book, really the what make or break a team and what make or break a product or a company as well.
Yeah, I love the quote, failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success, right?
Yeah, it's necessary. You don't learn, we experiment, we try things, we prototype, and you don't get it on the first go. Very rarely does that happen. Yet there's still this thing out there, this perception that we have to get it right the first time. And having an understanding that if you can get it kind of right the first time, that's great. And then you iterate and then you move on from there.
So you mentioned bad mistakes being mistakes that are repeated, which is great. Well, tell me a little bit more about good mistakes. What are some examples of good mistakes?
Good mistakes are where you would have thought that something would work, or even if there's a lesson to be had culturally or technically or in process. Sometimes we create processes with the best of intentions, and the processes theoretically work. Even if you've socialized it with a team and everyone says, yeah, let's do it this way, and then you document it and you say, this is our SOP, this is our standard operating procedure. And sometimes they still don't work. So that's a good mistake, because you're doing the right thing on the way to a better result. And it just, like you said in that quote, failure is part of success. You don't learn by not doing. You learn by doing.
Right. And you talked about some processes as well. You mentioned earlier about Slack. Is that something you use mainly to connect and to communicate with your team, or are there other platforms or services you use?
I mean, we use a pretty diverse stack of different tools depending on what it is. So the company that Showcase IDX, was acquired about 18 months ago in August 2020 by eXp World Holdings, whose companies include Verbella, which is a VR work enablement online virtual workspace, and eXp Realty, which is the fastest growing real estate company in the world. They bought us to work for eXp Realty, right? And eXp Realty uses Verbella a lot, and Frame VR, which is a new in-browser version of a virtual workspace. So we do use that. We also use Slack internally. Pretty much 99.5% of my internal communications with my team is through Slack. Written communication. We've opted to not use email really at all internally. I hear from people on our team quite often that they haven't checked their email in many days, and because that's just not how we communicate. But then we also, for virtual meetings, we do use Verbella and Frame VR, which are part of the kind of sister companies of ours. But also we do use Zoom and Google Meet. Whatever tool fits the job best, that's kind of our approach.
Yeah, it's interesting. I talk to a lot of leaders on the podcast, and I hear, Slack come up frequently. But I do find it interesting, as a person who now I don't have a big team, so I use email personally, and then Slack as well. But I do find email works quite well for my business. But are there occasions where perhaps part of the and maybe you've covered this in the sort of the onboarding of new talent to understand Slack and how, not because it sounds like if they send you an email or if they send someone else on the team an email, that may go, unnoticed for some time versus a Slack message, which, gets addressed pretty quickly. So, is that part of like the onboarding, procedure or tell me about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. We spend a lot of time on onboarding, and it even starts beyond onboarding. So I interview everyone who gets to the offer stage, to start, and really my interview, I guess it's technically an interview, is really a discussion about culture and setting expectations. And it's the final opportunity for them to really ask some tough questions from kind of where the buck stops with me, to make sure that what they've heard from recruiters and from team leads, and also we do a lot of cross-team interviewing as well, but making sure that there's no dissonance between what they're hearing from everyone and especially from me. And that works out great. So what we then do is we set up that expectation right from the get-go, before they're even signed an offer. And then through onboarding, we do that. And occasionally people will come in and they'll send an email and, they'll either learn the hard way that no one responds, or they respond, it takes a while, or someone, whoever the recipient is, was like, hey, this is actually something that's best for Slack. So, and then just kind of train that way. In addition to the kind of onboarding training, actually doing it and having the whole team kind of not push the culture, but embrace the culture. It's a lot more than what I can do as one single person, regardless of my title. Is like where I see the wins is when folks on our team are embracing our values and embracing the process that we've all decided is what we're going to go with, and actually doing that from any level of the company. And we're quite flat, and this is actually one of the ways that having kind of a flat-ish org structure really, really works, is because this kind of stuff just doesn't come from the top. It comes not just from one person, it comes from a bunch of people. And to get there, it's a lot of very, very intentional, consistent discussion about culture and how we work together, and really just talking about that way more than I ever want to.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've said that, I don't need to say that again. No, I've got to repeat it all the time, because by the time I'm starting to get sick of saying it, people are just starting to hear it and live it. So it's one of those things as a leader, getting those things like Slack into the culture. There's plenty of other examples too of just how we treat each other and how we work together. It's not a one-time, I'm in a all-hands meeting and I'm going to say, this is how we do it. It has to be, the expectations have to be set, and then they have to be followed through on, even when it's hard and even when it's difficult. And that's how you get that kind of success in getting new people in to understand that Slack is the way that we do things. And, even more fundamental, like the process, like our product development process, how we just baseline treat people and what we don't put up with, because we're very low drama, because drama is avoidable in the workplace if you deal with things the right way early. Certainly people are always going to get kind of a little bit peeved at each other. It happens, but there's ways to address that, I think, that we've been rather successful with. We're not perfect, but it's certainly probably the most drama-free workspace with the team size that we have right now that I've operated in. And it doesn't seem to be changing, which is awesome.
Is the team, remind me now, because you had me deliver a presentation, the ROI of NICE a while back for your team, which was an absolute pleasure, and they were very engaged, and I could tell like you have a great culture there. It was pretty clear, and their feedback was fantastic. Is the team fully remote, fully distributed now?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And that we did that. We started that actually before we were acquired because of the pandemic. We had an office here in Atlanta, But we were a very small team before we were acquired. We had around 8 people, then we went down to 6. So in the past 18 months, we've grown to 40. And, with that and the fact that the company that acquired us is fully remote, and that's a big part of their culture, it was just the decision to make.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel. Do you do any functions or events in person to bring your team together? Occasionally, or once a quarter or a year, like retreats or something like that.
We haven't yet, but we have had people kind of meet up regionally, and going to a conference here. And I was in a conference a week or so last week in Portland, where a small group of our engineers were there. But we are doing at the end of the summer, our first Showcase summer camp, where we are actually bringing everyone in from across the United States, and they are literally across the United States, to a summer camp. We're even looking for school buses to pick them up from the airport in.
I love it.
So I think that's really important. I think the remote thing is great in many respects. I don't think I think you can get productivity increases over being in an office. That being said, there's something to be said for being in front of people and seeing their reactions in person and getting to know people on a personal and human level that you just don't. And we try real hard, and it's just not the same thing to being in front of someone and, being able to have a chat, relax, and just kind of, get to know someone in person. So for us, we try and be very, very intentional about that for creating spaces at work, whether it's after a stand-up or a meeting to kind of have some casual banter time. We also have like a bi-weekly kind of happy hour, which is Friday afternoons, which is also Friday afternoon, kind of 4 p.m. Eastern, which is 1 p.m. On the West Coast. But where we can just get together and kind of have some fun and just kind of, we do some various things. Your talk was one of the things. So we actually try and do stuff for that just kind of is a little bit more relaxed and chill. And sometimes it's exceedingly stupid. We had a online petting zoo, which is about as stupid as it sounds, and the whole time I was like I was just face palming and going, I've gone too far, because I found it exceptionally amusing as a CEO to do this, but the reaction was awesome. Like, everyone really got into it because the person presenting was treating all of us like we were 4, and it was just so ridiculous. It was awesome. And that's keeping it light is important. That we've got a lot of serious stuff that we deal with. Especially kind of as a leader, you're dealing with emotions a lot, your other people's and your own. And, it's important to create an atmosphere where people can talk to you and they feel like it's not like, getting sent to the principal's office when they talk to me or something like that. This is kind of not the way I roll anyway, but it's it's important to be able, and it's not just to me, it's having people be able to talk to each other in a really, really positive way is really, really key.
What are some tips for making yourself as a leader more approachable, less feared, that kind of thing?
Don't yell at people. I mean, yeah. And I'm not a yeller anyway. I'm more of a, like, if you think of a parent, like, I'm very disappointed in you right now. No, and I don't do that. No, I think approachability, is something that is not a singular thing, but as a leader, you should be influencing the culture of approachability, and it should not just be about you. Everyone needs to be approachable. And I think one key tenet that we've really taken into our entire culture is the concept of assume positive intent. And that, for me personally, has been kind of life-changing, because I didn't always assume positive intent, But when things go wrong and someone, screws something up or it doesn't go right, or they say something, don't always jump to the worst conclusion of their motivations is essentially what's behind it. And, we call it API. Sometimes we'll be like, we'll be in a meeting and it's like, API, come on, chill out a little. Because people make mistakes and people have bad days. And, what we've been able to do is really look at our culture and promote the fact that we're all here for the same reason. We want to succeed. And this is what success looks like. And this is what we're all going for. And if you can kind of create that vision and then back that up with action towards that goal, even if you screw it up occasionally, that goes a long way to that, because people then start to trust you. And it's all about trust, right? So if I know that everyone's kind of marching generally towards the same vision and kind of goals, if we want to look at OKRs, all that kind of stuff, that's one thing. But this is more of a marching to the same drum, but everyone's playing a different beat on the drum, all right? Yeah. But somehow it all works. And then once you understand that, you get that trust where you can say, hey, well, that was kind of a bit shitty, but, they're probably having a bad day. I'm not going to jump to the worst case assumption that they're trying to screw me over personally. And once you kind of get that mindset, it really, really frees you up to be looking at what the problem is and not being kind of offended and getting up in your feelings about how someone's treating you as much. And certainly you don't want to be naive about it, but it's been pretty transformational for us.
Yeah, I think emotional intelligence is such an important thing, and as speaking of the API that you mentioned, I think that's part of the NICE methodology, and part of the framework that I teach is empathy, right? And which is really at its core what this is all about. Is pausing long enough to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're communicating with, and when you do that, you may realize like, oh, wait a minute, maybe they're just bringing it, a different approach to this, or maybe there's been a misunderstanding that I didn't think about. And so, I think by slowing down and kind of assessing the information and the delivery of the information, that you can correct things. I love that. Yeah.
So one of the other things we do to that end is we use a set of reports called the Birkman. So it's BIRKMAN. And we actually have a consultant that does a monthly kind of town hall session, drop-in session for our staff to do it. But I was very much against it when I first heard about it, because I'm not a fan of like quote unquote personality tests. I think they're garbage, and I just don't like them, because usually you get them and then people go, oh, I'm a this, that, and the other, and no one ever uses them. The difference between a Birkman and that kind of thing is it has exceedingly prescriptive ways for individuals to communicate, to define very broadly and kind of specifically in some ways how people communicate. So how they communicate out and how they best take in information as well. And it has also been a massive tool for us to help, especially when people aren't talking, when they're talking past each other, when one person's communication style doesn't mesh with another, when someone's being too direct and blunt, when the person on the other end, that creates a stress reaction in them, and then they start, so it doesn't fix everything, but it allows us to identify stuff. And since we're all here for the same reason and motivated to do the right thing, it really helps our team communicate, where I know I can't talk to this person in the way I normally would, because it will freak them out. and my motivation is not to freak them out.
Right.
So I want them to be successful, and I want everyone to be successful, because their success is my success. So I want to adjust the way I speak to this individual in a certain way, And maybe that also is like they can't, they're really bad at getting feedback in a group setting. So, it allows you to kind of really adjust how you communicate. And really, at the end of the day, communication will make or break any company, any team, anything. It's all communication, like at the end of the day. And you talked about empathy. Empathy is very important. Obviously, to be able to kind of put yourself in others' shoes. But even then, if you're not good at communicating that empathy, that can come across wrong too, and can come across, it can demotivate people, and often lead to, attrition. The Great Resignation, I think, is a perfect part of a sign that, a lot of folks aren't communicating well.
How do your team members communicate their Berkman communication, techniques or what have you, or maybe their personal sort of findings or descriptions from the report? How do they communicate it with their colleagues so that if I'm new and I'm reaching out to Scott about something, is there a way for me to know what works best for you ahead of time? How does that work?
Yeah.
Content marketing, SEO, competitive research, advertising. Sounds like a large scope of work you need to get done. How about full digital marketing control over your business? SEMrush can be your right hand for that. It has over 50 tools and reports to cover any online marketing activities. No more switching from one service to another. Get a 14-day free trial and watch your business grow. Go to bit.ly/SEMrushMPN. That's bit.ly/SEMrushMPN.
So it's a few different things. So we have the monthly kind of Berkman kind of town hall thing, which is mostly just kind of a drop-in kind of help thing with the consultant that we use. But when people come on and they do the Berkman, each person gets walked through what it means, how to use it. We have a Google Drive with everyone's Berkman in it. It is not, unless someone absolutely is vehement that they don't want, and because we're not going to force anyone to, but no one has done this yet. But we have a Google Drive where you can go in to see everyone's Berkman. We also have the ability to create custom reports that are actually kind of this relationship report where it's like, okay, person A and person B, and it actually drills down into those styles and actually gives recommendations based on individual reports, which is really good. They actually use this in relationship counseling a lot, which makes sense because work is very much, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
You've got these people and you've got very different people with different motivations, different ways of communicating, different cultures. Myself being Australian, coming over here, I communicate kind of differently than everyone else. And sometimes I've been over here long enough, it's about 20 years or so now, that I've kind of picked up on, how to do it. But like, I remember originally, like, it was very difficult, just the simple things, the way I would approach things and talk about things to people would put people off. And I kind of learned that I didn't have Berkman. I just had to kind of learn the hard way.
Yeah. Are there, what are some, and I know some of this firsthand from having, many, I was a backpacker many years ago in Europe. So I've met and traveled with many Aussies along my days. What are some differences with sort of Aussies and Americans? As a Canadian, I'm curious what your answer is here too.
Yeah, there's a lot. The funny thing is like on the surface, the cultures seem kind of similar, although Australian culture is actually a lot more European. But to Australians, it seems very American because, like in Australia, there's a lot of American stuff. I think probably one of the biggest adjustments for Australians to come over here with is we're pretty blunt. And we're pretty direct and tempering that a bit. The kicker is a lot of us are very, very blunt, but particular in how we receive blunt news. So it's like it's one of those things that I've had to learn. So if you looked at my Berkman, I'm kind of typical kind of leaderish type person. I'm very direct, but I use empathy, and I'm not one of those folks. I don't think, and it's kind of backed up by the Berkman too, that where like I actually care how you receive the information.
Yeah.
But I'm still pretty blunt. I'm still pretty direct, especially in American kind of terms. But on the receiving end, if you did that to me, I would be like, "Are you bringing this? What are you doing?" Like, it's like I don't take it very well at all, and that's also something that I've worked on over the years that has really really helped me out, because I realize that not everyone understands the best way to talk to me and to others. So that's a big motivation behind actually doing the Berkman and continuing it on, so everyone new who joins the team does it, and kind of starts to use it the way that we use it as a team.
I feel like the sub of this episode, the title could be like "How to Talk to an Aussie."
Kind of. We're very, very, very easy to talk to.
No, I know.
We really are.
No, I know it. And as a Canadian, because I've lived in the States now for 15 years, and so I've certainly picked up on things myself. So interesting. So who is someone that was especially nice to you in your career?
So I had, I started off my career. I've had so many jobs, it's crazy. Like even, post college, professional firefighter.
Oh, wow.
I worked, at small little places and kind of really worked my way up, and ran a hardware store with my dad in Sydney. Then I met my wife's American, so we moved over here about 20 years ago. The job that brought me to Atlanta was in real estate, CTO of one of the largest real estate companies in the country. And about midway through my time there, they hired a CEO. And he was his former role was in retail, running a massive swath of some of the biggest retail stores in the country at the time. And he was looking for something different. And I was young. I kind of cringe when I think back, because I was CTO of a multi-billion-dollar company at, I don't know, it was like 28 or something like that. And I look back now being in the age I am now and just kind of go, wow, I had a lot to learn. And his name was Steve Graham, and he was, as well as the CFO that was there at the time, John Gardner, really kind of took me under their wing and taught me some of the kind of hard business and, just life, how to be successful, and how not to hate work and how to talk to people. That was really, really, in terms of nice, it was the nicest thing anyone could have ever done for me. And that's something that I try and pass forward in all the folks that I work with, whether they're on my team or even in the whole of EXP, is I think mentorship is so important. And then when you get it, and I'm still, like my boss right now is Glenn Sanford, who is CEO and founder of EXP World Holdings. And I learn stuff from him all the time. I'll never stop learning, but being able to pass on the knowledge and experience so that someone hopefully doesn't make the same mistakes as you. And I've made plenty. I've made a couple of doozies, but I've learnt from most of them. Like there's still a couple of things I do that I could probably do better at. But overall, it's, Steve and in particular John at Remax Greater Atlanta back in the day, really at that time it was really formative and transformative for me, and I still use what they taught me and kind of the advice that they gave me to this day.
How do how do people find mentors? It's something I hear a lot about, and it comes. I know mentorship comes in different forms as well. I mean, reading a book or listening to a podcast like this can help, but connecting with other thought leaders, the old line, you always want to be or you never want to be the smartest one in the room.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some tips that you have possibly for folks listening to maybe find a mentor, find people to learn from?
First of all, you need to want to learn from other people. I mean, that's the biggest step. If you don't want to, and you're doing it just to say, oh, I had this person as a mentor, that person as a mentor, that looks great on LinkedIn, but you're not going to, it's not going to work. Mentors are everywhere. Yeah. They are absolutely everywhere. I mean, I'm mentored by literally the youngest engineer on our team. I get mentorship from them. I get mentorship from other leaders within, the EXP World Holdings group of companies. I get a ton of mentorship from the VPs on my team, all of which in their respective areas are way better at what they do than I am. And, I see my job really as kind of a few things, is working on the people and the resources and the vision. And, in order to do that, I have to understand stuff that I have to learn new stuff, and I can't just be stuck in my own head about this is the way to do it because this is the way I say, because honestly, there's a lot of stuff I don't know about. There's a lot of stuff I do know about too, but mentors can be anywhere, and you just have to be open to seeing it. And it's so easy to reach out to folks these days. Being creative depends on who you're going for. Like, a lot of folks hit up folks like Gary V and stuff like that, like Gary Vaynerchuk and like these super high profile guys who just don't have a lot of time. And unless you're exceedingly creative and can get to the point and be like, hey, I want to spend 3 minutes with you on the clock, I just have one question, you can do that kind of stuff. But where the value is like, depending on what industry you're in or where you want to go, talking to the people who do what you think you might want to do, and you can find those people anywhere. And generally, most people are up for talking and answering questions and giving some advice.
You did a video a while back, and I wrote a blog post about it because I love the idea. And I wanted to share a little bit about this before we move on to the lightning round, and we'll wrap things up here. But so you did a video, and it was called "What's It Like to Work at Showcase IDX?" And you had your staff kind of answer that question, sort of unedited, unscripted, on their webcams at home, and then those clips were all kind of pasted together into a single email or a single video, which I thought was a great idea on a few different levels. I mean, one, I think almost like journaling in a way, when you communicate verbally or write it down, like something you like I started journaling last year, and I've journaled on and off for many years, but I started doing like a what's going right. So I start every journal entry with what's going right. So it starts on a positive note. And in this way, it's people expressing, what it's like to work there. And that naturally is you would hope it's a positive answer, of course. And they are. So, but then also as a promotional tool to help recruit new talent, I think it's also a really smart idea. Tell me a little bit about the video, how that idea came up and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So that was born out of a recruiting need because, we have what we feel is a really great culture. We've got actual values and we actually follow them, which is different in my experience to other places where that stuff was just kind of on a web page somewhere, and when the rubber hit the road, whatever was more convenient to the company was what was going to happen, and regardless of whether it was a company value or not. So underlying our culture is one of our biggest selling points for people to coming to work for us, including the kind of interesting work that we're doing, especially on the engineering side. We've got some big opportunities and problems that we're looking to solve. So what I wanted to do, what I saw was a hole where we weren't really getting across the culture outside of, a job description, in a job ad, right? I wanted a way to actually show that it's not just me. Like, I could do it, like, I could totally do the same thing, what it's like to work at Showcase and all that kind of stuff, and that would be fine. But I also thought that, I'm biased, or I should be biased, and like all of our other leaders should be biased. So let's get, like, people who aren't VP and above to kind of answer these questions honestly, and let's package it up. And honestly, it worked better than I could have ever imagined. The first time I saw it, I mean, even thinking about it, I kind of get goosebumps because that's my motivation, especially when it comes to culture, is when I've got someone saying, I've gone to work, every job I've ever done, within 6 weeks, I was looking at an exit plan and looking how to move on to the next thing. And this is the first job I've never had to do that, and I've been here far longer than that. That feels really, really, really good, especially with my job, which is that. My job is to facilitate culture, not be it, right? And when I see the entire team be able to paraphrase kind of what it's like, what those cultural values are, but then relate it to their actual experience is so powerful. And it's really, really resonated with people who have been recruiting and works really, really, really well.
Yeah, I'll make sure to include a link to that in the show notes on the episode so folks can find that.
That'd be great.
All right, so let's move on to the quick lightning round. So complete this sentence. Nice guys and gals finish.
Period.
Nice. What's a nice book that you recommend to the nice makers listening?
A nice book. I'm a bit... it's not businessy. It's called It's a heartbreaking work of staggering genius by Dave Eggers. Okay. So it's heartbreaking work of staggering genius. It really talks about life and the struggle and how to work through the struggle of life and look on the brighter side of things and to push through. And it's for me, it's very, very nice.
That's a great one. I love it. And I haven't read it, but it's now on my list. So, how is Scott nice to himself?
Oh, that's a trick question. I really try and understand that I give myself permission to not be able to do everything all at once. And I give myself permission to do big things when I can, but also permission to kind of to steal something from a book I've read. Permission to chill. Yeah. It's really, really important to be able to just not always be at 100. Sometimes we just have to step back, and that's where I can get kind of some of the perspective I need to do my job the best, is not when I'm just all up in it. And that is me being nice to me.
If you had a billboard, what would it say?
A billboard. Scott tries to be the best person he can to him and everyone else.
I love it. Scott, man, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, mate. It's absolutely been a pleasure.
How can people get a hold of you?
they can get a hold of me on LinkedIn. If you just do a search for Scott Lockhart, he's probably going to have a link on the podcast page.
Yep.
That's probably the best way of getting a hold of me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Dave. Been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Nice Podcast. Please leave a review if you enjoyed this episode at friend.nicepodcast.co. And you can find show notes, links to other episodes, and lots of other goodies over at nicepodcast.co. Music by Alistair Crystal at alistaircrystal.ca. We'll see you next time, and be nice.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Neville Hobson and Shell Holtz are the legendary hosts of FIR4, Immediate Release, a great podcast. Shell, tell us what these fine folks will get when they listen.
Well, Jason Neville and I have been producing FIR since January of 2005. It's the very first PR communications podcast ever. We analyze current news and trends from a communication perspective with a short episode or two each week and a longer, more in-depth show every month.
Awesome. Where can people subscribe?
Well, they can go to firpodcastnetwork.com. They can find the show, of course, at marketingpodcast.net or search for Immediate Release wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard him, folks. Go subscribe.